Si tu voudrais te marier avec moi, si tu voudrais te marier avec moi, si tu voudrais te marier avec moi, allons se marier,
Evangeline. This is the forest primeval, the murmuring pines and the hemlocks bearded with moss, and in garments green, indistinct in the twilight, stand like druids of eld, with voices sad and prophetic, stand like harpers hoar, with beards that rest on their bosoms. Loud from its rocky caverns, the deep-voiced neighboring ocean speaks, and in accents disconsolate answers the wail of the forest. This is the forest primeval, but where are the hearts that beneath it leap like the roe, when he hears in the woodland the voice of the huntsman? In 1755, Nova Scotia Governor Charles Lawrence made the fateful decision to expel the Acadian population. Acadians requested that they would not be required to bear arms against France, but Lawrence was adamant, stating that his order was unconditional. The Catholic Acadians had been swearing oaths of neutrality up to this point, but now they were deemed a threat and their lands were seized and replaced by new Protestant colonists. Acadians were rounded up, some were tricked into congregating, apprehended, and forcibly removed from their homes. While some may have been aware that this was a possibility, others were completely taken off guard. In 1847, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow published Evangeline, an epic poem about an Acadian woman who is separated from her one true love during the deportation and spends her life trying to find him. The poem showed some of the sad events that transpired. Is it possible that some Acadians placed valuables in the surrounding area or on Oak Island before they left Nova Scotia? There are folk tales about the Acadians burying their wealth in secret spots with the plan to come back for it later, since they couldn't take it with them. And it is known that some did get back to Nova Scotia, but upon returning, found their homes and land occupied by new settlers. Many of these possessions, which in some cases were small fortunes and coins, supposedly are still buried near old Acadian homesteads. Hidden Acadian treasure is a common story in community history that has been told over the years. The Acadians were mostly simple farmers, but there have been discoveries of treasure. The possibility exists that some Acadians were wealthy, and this wealth was hidden and never recovered. This may have included the savings of several Acadian families who pooled and hid their little money they possessed. One story tells of a man plowing his field one day using a team of oxen that once belonged to the Acadians, and the plow struck something solid which was first thought to be a root. It proved to be the bail of a huge iron pot which caught the point of the plow and brought the team up very suddenly. The man quickly discovered that he had found something of great value. The man sat on the pot to hide its contents and sent home the neighbor's son. The man, after the discovery, built a large home on the property. When the man died, which was in the late 18th or early 19th century, he left property valued at $12,000. This was a considerable sum for the time and gives credence to the tale about the discovery of hidden Acadian treasure. In Acadian folklore, there are tales told of pirates who took their treasure and landed close to the coast to hide their spoils. Under the cover of night, they would gather in a secret place, dig a hole, and deposit a chest or pot which held the treasure. Then they would draw lots among themselves to determine who would be killed and buried near the treasure. The spirit of this unfortunate soul was to guard the treasure. Beware the intruder who should tread on that soil or try to dig for the treasure. It became necessary for treasure seekers to take every precaution in conducting their search. For locating the treasure, they used a curiously constructed rod. A small sealed bottle containing mercury and other ingredients was flanked on either side of long strips of whalebone attached to it by leather thongs. The free ends of the whalebone were curved outward to fit the thumbs of the person who carried the rod. Only someone with thumbprints perfectly circular could use it effectively. The rod was carried in absolute silence, with the bottle upwards. The bearer knew they were near treasure when the bottle began to swing down to the earth. After discovering treasure, they drew a large circle around the spot and sprinkled it liberally with holy water to drive away the evil spirit guarding it. In the minds of the Acadians, the soul of a pirate could be nothing but damned. During the sprinkling, they had to be careful to keep their heads respectfully bowed and their arms outstretched in the form of a cross. Then they struck the chest with a long iron rod bearing a cross at the top and blessed by a priest. This rod was to remain fixed in the ground until the chest was unearthed. If this ceremony was not strictly observed, the coveted wealth slipped away to another spot, and all their work was useless. After this, they began to dig in perfect silence. Every particle of earth that was dug up had to find a place within the circle. Even a twig or a bit of root could not be thrown outside it. Is this just superstition, or did it work? One of the main heroes in Acadian history is Joseph Brassard Beausoleil. He is still revered today for his bravery as leader of the resistance of the Acadians at the time of the expulsion from Nova Scotia. In 1755, the British, who were disputing possession of the Chignecto Isthmus with the French, laid siege to Fort Beaujoire. Brassard engaged in some skirmishes against the British and in one battle captured a soldier. A French officer testified that Brassard was recognized to be one of the bravest and most enterprising of the Acadians. The day the fort surrendered, he was bold enough to attack the British camp with 60 men. 2 days later, he went to see British Colonel Robert Monckton and proposed acting as a mediator between the British and the Indians on the condition that he be granted amnesty. Monckton agreed to the arrangement, but it was subject to Governor Lawrence's approval. Many Acadians evaded capture and retreated to the deep forests where only provincial rangers would search for them. In 1758, Brassard, under orders from Governor Pierre de Rigaud de Vaudreuil, fitted out a small privateer and was successful in capturing some prizes in the Bay of Fundy. Aided by his 4 sons and the Acadians who had taken refuge along the Petit Kodiak River, he continued to harass the British forces. Is it possible that the location of Oak Island was known to Beausoleil because of his privateering? A few Acadians were still resisting the British in 1761 after the fall of Quebec and Louisbourg. William Forster, a British colonel, wrote to General Geoffrey Amherst in August 1761, "These people are spirited up in their obstinacy by one Beausoleil, and 1 or 2 others who have already rendered themselves so obnoxious to the English that they are conscious of the treatment they deserve at our hands." Brassard and his group were hiding in the woods and were starving by winter and had no choice but to surrender. In October 1762, Brassard and his family were among the prisoners held at Fort Edward in Pisquid, Nova Scotia. Brassard was found to be in possession of a letter written by the ambassador of France in London, in which Acadians were urged to leave and go to France. Beausoleil was brought before the Governor's Council in Halifax, but not released until 1763. He then chartered a schooner to sail to Saint-Domingue, Hispaniola, with 202 Acadians. The climate was very harsh, and Brossard took the survivors on to Louisiana. They were the first Acadian families to settle on Spanish land grants in the Prairie Bayou region now called Acadiana. On April 8, 1765, in New Orleans, Shaw Philippe Aubry, the commandant of Louisiana, appointed Beausoleil captain of the militia and commandant of the Acadians in the region of the Attakapas. On April 24, 1765, Aubry wrote to Duc de Choiseul, the French foreign minister, to inform him of the arrival of Beausoleil and 58 to 60 Acadian families. They were given a 6-month supply of provisions, ammunition, livestock, tools, and medicine. The term Cajun is the anglicized pronunciation of the French word Cajun, which is what the Acadians called themselves. Beausoleil died a few months later and was buried at Camp Beausoleil. More than 12,000 Acadians, 3/4 of their population in Nova Scotia, were expelled from the colony between 1755 and 1764. Is it possible that the Acadians buried their treasures in the hopes of returning to Nova Scotia one day to retrieve them? Is one of these treasure pots related to pieces of a suspected pot that Dan Blankenship unearthed and was shown last season on The Curse of Oak Island?
Mon petit cœur, si tu voudrais te marier avec moi, si tu voudrais te marier avec moi, pitié. Je te donnerai la clé de mon coffre et tout mon or et mon argent si tu voudrais te marier avec moi, si tu voudrais te marier avec moi. Allons se marier, Jimmy.
Please join Quest of Oak Island Facebook group and subscribe to Quest of Oak Island podcast on YouTube for more information.